ki Manchester, I tupu aki au ki Ingarangi, Hiraka, Ripia, Aratiria, me Kotorina. Ke ponake ahau I noho ana, ko Mireille Consalvey toko ingoa, tina koto katoa. I really liked last week how Tim shared how he came to be standing virtually in front of you all. So I thought that I would just briefly do the same today and tell you a little bit about myself. Whilst giving away my age, I think you can tell I'm from the 70s by this photo, and this is where I started life in Manchester in the UK with my dad. But then we lived overseas from the UK when I was little. We lived in Sri Lanka and Libya and Algeria, and then eventually moved to Scotland, which is where I completed my education, doing a degree in marine biology and environmental studies. I went to the University of St Andrews in Scotland, and I studied microalgae that lived on mudflats and salt marshes. And so I spent a lot of time being very muddy, wading around and looking at the impacts of climate change on these pretty cool algal communities. I moved to New Zealand in 2005 to take up a job at the National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research as a deep sea marine biologist. And over that time, without intending to, I kind of morphed from being an active researcher into a project manager. And then that was how I came to move to Victoria University of Wellington Research Office, where I worked behind the scenes helping people with grant applications. I had a brief stint at MB, the Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment, giving out the money that I used to apply for. And in September last year, I joined Te Rangahau Te Manawa Haukora, and that's how I come to be standing before you today. Outside of work, I am a mama to a not so small child now. I'm also New Zealand citizenship, having got my citizenship in 2019. And I'm also a mama to a puppy called Peggy. And so all of this is a way of saying this is how I come to be standing in front of you today, sharing my personal experiences as an active researcher, as well as almost 10 years in the University Research Office and also a year at one of our biggest funders, MB. Oh, hang on, a little bit too fast fingers. And so I guess that's how I feel that today I'm in a good position to tell you how hopefully you can maximise your chances of being funded, as well as going through some of the common pitfalls that are made on the road to funding success. Throughout every researcher's career who's applying for research funding, you'll probably sink months and even years into the sport that is applying for money to support your time and Rangahau activities. This is time that's going to take you away from actually doing the fun stuff, doing the Rangahau, writing papers, supervising postgraduate students and teaching the next generation, not to mention the potential of stealing weekends and evenings and public holidays and precious time from friends and whānau. I often hear researchers talk about sort of the lottery element of grant applications, and I guess what I want to do today is how can you maximise your chances of your numbers being drawn by writing a good proposal. Because what we want to, if you are going to put all this time into writing these applications, we want to make sure that it's time well spent. Many of the points I'm going to make today are probably going to seem pretty obvious, but most unsuccessful applications I've seen will have failed to tick off at least one of these. So first of all, make sure that your idea is in scope for the fund that you're applying to. This is the first and probably most vital point, is that you pick a suitable fund to apply to. It doesn't matter if your idea is worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize. If the fund is not looking to support that work, then you'll just crash and burn no matter how good the idea is. Also, proceeding straight into writing your proposal with no idea of what the funder's asking for is also a recipe for disaster. So I guess first, before you even do anything, just familiarise yourself with the purpose of the fund. It'd be really time well spent. And a really good way of doing this is to seek out successful people and applications from previous years. You can do quite a lot of good fossicking around online and see who got funded in the past and who would be a good person to reach and talk to. It can also be helpful through that network to find example applications that have been successful. For example, colleagues via your team or via our team as well. And we can share those with you for those that we have exemplars. The next thing once you've decided that this is the fund for you, is to read the guidelines. All funders will publish guidelines about their fund, which will cover everything from eligibility to what they want to fund, to how much funding they have available, as well as the actual rules of what your application should look like. I know that you'll just want to get going and it's really painful to actually have to stop, but just putting in a bit of time here and reading those guidelines will actually save you time in the long run. And it can also help identify any questions that you might have ahead of time so that we can support you in answering those questions rather than the day before it being too late. The worst thing that can happen if you don't read the guidelines is you actually miss something vital in there, which then could deem you ineligible for that fund. And so that would mean you'd basically lost all the time that you've put into it and would not be able to be submit. Also, even if you might have applied to a fund before, or your colleagues might have applied to the fund before, the rules can change year on year. So it is worth, even if you've done this a lot, you know, and even someone in my position, you know, who's spent 10 years working with funds, I'll still read the guidelines just to make sure that everything is as it was the year before. I know there's more, there's going to be a lot of reading. The other advice I would give to people is to read the assessor guidelines. Most funders will make the guidelines that they give to assessors to score your proposals available online. Now, most people who assess proposals give their time for free and they do it on top of their day job. So when you're writing your proposal, it's really prudent to think, let's write this for the assessor, someone who is tired and is grumpy and it's probably late at night and they just want to get through and get these assessments done. I think you have a really good chance of winning over assessors by making it as easy as possible for them to assess your proposal against the scoring systems that the funder uses. And some of these scoring systems are really complicated. Some of them are like the Da Vinci Code of scoring systems. And so it's, if you familiarize yourself with them, you can basically feed the assessor what they need to give you the best possible score. Also, as well with your assessors, don't assume expertise. Reviewers won't always have sort of the authoritative knowledge of your field. Some funders will use a panel to triage the first round of proposals. And it's really a matter of chance of whether the members who are doing this triage are familiar with your Rangahau or not. The other thing that can be good as well is within there is to have a really well curated reference list, so that you're not just referencing your own work, but you're giving the assessors signals of, you know, these are your peers and who you're working with and who also are making contributions to the field. All right, it's finally time to get going. Start your research proposal as soon as you can. When I used to work in the university research office, I'd see lots of the academics I work with who would dock students' marks for late entries and late submissions, but at the same time, they themselves would miss all internal deadlines and submit proposals with minutes to spare. Every now and again, an adrenaline-fueled, coffee-fueled late night gamble can pay off and a proposal can go in, you know, with minutes to spare and can get funded. But more often than not, late proposals are really riddled with errors. The other thing to remember is if you're unsuccessful with an application, but then resubmit the next year, that some of the same assessors will be looking at it. And so if they saw a really poorly executed bid the year before, it's likely to tarnish their thoughts on what they're reading this year. Another advantage of getting everything ready with time to spare is that you can actually put the proposal down, have a bit of a break, and then you can come back in and read it fresh and have a final read through. I think having a really polished proposal demonstrates to the reader and the assessor that you've got this attention to detail, and also gives them confidence in the quality of the Rangahau that you're going to be doing. A poorly executed application riddled with errors and mistakes can signal a similarly sloppy approach to the mahi that you do. Many funding applications require a CV and sometimes in a predetermined template. And a common mistake I would see is that people kind of just do this at the last minute, almost treat it as a formality and, you know, just something I just need to get in and forget about it. But the advice I would give to people is actually to turn this on its head and have your CV be one of the first things that you do, and ideally tailor it to suit the fund to ensure that your back catalogue in your CV is as strong as possible. If you're an earlier career researcher, don't be daunted by the fact that your CV might be compared, to some old professor who's been, doing this for 40, 50 years. Remember that you can tailor your CV and choose different ways of measuring how your success might look like. You can talk to librarians about different alt metrics that you might use and alternative ways of showing impact. I'd also say treat populating your CV as a long-term campaign. And so it should always be something, you have and you check in regularly and you add things and tweak it so that you don't suddenly have to do it in the final hour, do the whole thing. It should literally be there as a grab bag and ready to go. The other thing as well, when you're going for funding is some years you might look at your CV and think, oh, maybe my CV could be a bit stronger if I had more publications. And it can be useful sometimes just to hit pause and say, you know what, I'm not going to put in an application this year, but I'm actually going to use the time that I would be spending on the application to write papers so that the next year my CV is really strong. So be aware of the wider context. I enjoyed this because this was homework that my boy actually submitted at school to describe his research methodology. And as you can see, he Googled it. But this is actually really good advice. You'll all have some amazing ideas for your Rangahau. And any part of putting in an application is to be aware of what else is out there and where your Rangahau fits in. So definitely spend some time familiarising yourself with work that's out there and where your piece of the puzzle fits in. There's nothing worse, and I tell you, I've been there in my own research career, is you have this brilliant idea and then you find out that someone else has pipped you to the post and already done it. But it's better to be aware of this so that you've got the opportunity to pivot or reframe your research rather than risk putting in an application that then the assessor says, oh, this work's been done already. And something that assessors will do if your research piques their interest is that they'll have a quick Google and see what else is out there. So if they're going to do it, you should do it as well. Demonstrate impact. Impact's a word you could potentially hear lots of. Where appropriate, it's really important to set your research in a wider context, and many funders want to demonstrate impact beyond the sort of dusty academia. It can be really important to have a line of sight from the Rangahau in your research to delivering societal benefit. And you can do this in lots of ways, including references in how your research is responding to government priorities and policies and needs. And that can actually increase your score from the assessors and your chances of being funded. Writing fancy sections like impact can actually sound really daunting, but truthfully, it's not. It's like, shh, don't tell anyone, it's not that hard. You yourself will know your why. And some of the best advice I ever heard was saying, when you think about your Rangahau, think about why it's important to a 10-year-old, because that's actually going to get to the core of why you do what you do. And then once you've got that in your mind, writing these sections is a lot easier. Following on from that impact, I just want to say, talking to everybody here, you've definitely got this. You've got this in spades. When I used to work at other institutions and I would have to give talks about impact, I'd have to remind people that you need to pay more than lip service to diversity and equity and inclusion. And would have to ask folks to kind of take the time to interrogate the research project and say, is this actually authentic? Can you truthfully say that your research is in partnership with the communities that you want to work with? Having the privilege of working here, I can absolutely flip this on its head and say, you got this. It's such a privilege working here. And I say, it just flows through everything you do here, and meaningful Mautaranga Māori is an actual superpower. So don't underplay this in applications that ask for this. I can guarantee there are so many Pākehā researchers who will talk a good game but don't have this, and so please don't be shy. Funders are, increasingly putting these considerations at the heart of decision making, and it is especially pertinent for nations such as ours with Indigenous peoples. Here in Aotearoa, there's the Vision Mātauranga policy, which aims to unlock the science and innovation potential of Māori knowledge, resources, and people. Mātauranga Māori is absolutely potential, has the potential for transformative research. So yeah, back yourselves. don't use jargon, but actually use a little bit of jargon. Just a little sense check about what's being done in your space around language. Are you the first cab off the ranks when it comes to putting your head in the tent and getting some runs on the board? Will the reviewer have the bandwidth to circle back to really understand your ecosystem? Maybe we should just put your idea in the car park. Jargon can just be the death knell of readability, and by and large, I'd say try and avoid it. But the level of jargon should be predetermined based on who the reviewer is. Sometimes you need a little bit of jargon just to give the assessor confidence that you actually know that you know what you're doing. But at the same time, don't alienate some of the readers. A fun fact from my own personal career, my PhD supervisor told me that my writing was more tabloid and I should be aiming for the Times of London. So maybe I was a little bit too casual in my own writing style. Follow the rules. I love a good rule. My advice here is use the templates supplied. Some funders will request that you populate your application using their specific templates. Others will have you input your application into a web portal, and some ask you to do both. What funding bodies want to do is create a level playing field for all the people who are applying to that fund. And so if you break the rules, you're actually doing a disservice to all applicants. You know, don't cheat. In the event that you do try and break the rules, you know, people try and reduce the font size or change the margins, all these little subtle things. The best case is that the funder or the assessor will roll their eyes, but the worst case is that your proposal will be rejected. Having read hundreds of proposals in my time, I can tell you it's really easy to spot subtle changes to formatting that gives away your failure to use the templates provided. You might think changing your line space, you know, from 1.5 to 1, or, you know, if the font limit's 11, I'm just going to change it to 10.5, you know, you'll get away with it. But when you're reading lots of them, you won't. And again, it would be really gutting to put in all this time for proposal and then have it rejected just because you didn't follow those rules. The money part can be quite uncomfortable to think about, but it is a reality of putting in applications for money. So don't be daunted, really think about the budget. Most applications are going to require to either submit a budget and make a commitment that you can deliver the research that you promised with the funds available. Preparing a budget is a really good way of scoping out whether a project can be achieved with the funds available, and that is whether you can actually deliver what you promised to deliver. A poorly budgeted research project can fail and have significant reputational consequences both to yourself and to your institute, and can decrease your chances of receiving funding in the future. It's also really essential to be aware of what the funder will and will not pay for. Many funding bodies, for example, won't cover the purchase of equipment. But the good news here is here in our team, we've got a group of budget ninjas who can support you in writing your budgets. So I guess the take home is don't be scared. We're here to support you with it. Having said all that, next time you think you're going to get the outcome of your research proposal, and a big bit of advice is prepare to fail. The best preparation in the world can still lead to failure. And when it happens, and it will happen, just be kind to yourself. Reread your proposal after rejection, look at feedback from the reviewers, and just learn the lessons. Many researchers who I've had the privilege of supporting have actually said that failing has been one of the best things to happen to them, because they subsequently put in a far stronger proposal in the future. What was that about failure? If you are successful, then we in our office, we might not see each other for a few years. I hopefully will have supported you to put in a proposal. You'll have got funded and you'll go forth. But I just would like to highlight that the very nature of doing research is that things go wrong. And if you're at the cutting edge of your discipline, things do go wrong and can go wrong. Just want to tell you that funded Rangahau fails all the time. And so rather than being scared of failure, recognize it as just a part of what happens. And if ever you feel that the wheels are starting to fall off, reach out to your research office, because chances are we've seen similar stumbles before, and we can actually support you in reshaping your project, as well as having conversations with funders on your behalf. So please remember that you're not alone. As soon as you have any worries, we're here. So when I say we, who do I mean? Come and get to know us. This is our Rangahau and innovation team. Our core role is to awhina kai Rangahau and kai mahi within Te Wairanga o Aotearoa to realise your Rangahau aspirations. This can help you strategically plan your research activities. We can help identify potential funders. We can help you develop grant applications. We can facilitate new collaborations and then support you with contracting and management of your research. Absolutely, we'd love to korero with you either in person or virtually or all of those things. You can reach us via our inbox, which we can share afterwards. Tim is based in Tamaki Makaurau. I'm based here in Poneke, and AJ calls Ōtepoti home. Between us, we've submitted hundreds of proposals and got hopefully a wealth of experience around the idiosyncrasies of each funder and how you can maximise your chances. So please don't be shy. So, after almost 10 years in a research office, what do I want researchers to know? What I hope has come across today is that we can save you time to help you submit the best proposal possible. One of the real treats of this job is when we have the opportunity to tell Kai Rangahau and Kai Mahi that they've been successful, but also based on the low success rates, we can be bearers of bad news. And we do see your pain and worry about you as you fight for research funding in a really tough environment. I never forget what a privilege my job is. To actually get to support Rangahau before it happens is really something special. And when I left research as a sort of frontline researcher myself, I guess my analogy with what I do now would be around a football team or soccer. Obviously, there's going to be star strikers like yourself who lead the Rangahau, but there are also midfielders and defenders. And I guess what I do is hopefully hold up the midfield, but support you in getting that goal. Just like to close by acknowledging the past and current members of Victoria University of Wellington Research Office, where I was trained. But all the researchers, research officers and funders I've worked with, the Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment, who gave me a really valuable insight in what goes on behind the scenes. And also to Manawa Hokora for both welcoming me to the team and giving me the opportunity to present to you today. So yeah, don't be shy. Please let me know if you have any partai. And I will stop sharing so that we can all see each other a little bit better.
Who's got partai for Mireille? Is it true?
Everyone is very quiet. Is it the shock of a full working week? We've all had to do 5 days this week.
I have a partai, Mireille, and it's about the jargon. Is that also, I know Te Reo Māori is not jargon, but I'm thinking about the funding that we're going to apply for. How, in your experience, do these funders deal with Te Reo Māori?
That's a great question. Largely, I would say some better than others. Be my response. Some funders will provide the opportunity that proposals can be submitted in Te Reo Māori, but at this stage the onus is placed on the researcher themselves to do the translation and make that submission, and also acknowledging that a lot of funders don't have many, if any, fluent Te Reo speakers there to assess the proposal, and particularly proposals which are going overseas as well might have the added mix. And so I guess at this stage it's not perfect, but it's getting better. The other thing it will be around the use of Te Reo words within your proposal, and some funders will work behind the scenes to upskill assessors so that they do have a greater proficiency around that language. But my advice would be, where possible, to include a glossary or definitions if you think the person assessing it might benefit from having that. So I guess there's the, should the situation be that the assessors should have good command of Todeo? Absolutely, they should. But the reality is, do they? Not always. And so I guess whilst we're not there as a nation yet, is that how can we support your application at the funder end? It's a really good pad thai.
It's not really a part-time, but like an observation, being a new into Rangahau proposals, and within our team is really cool, seeing how much everyone gives feedback on everyone else's proposals. So, like, and especially because we've got such a wide-ranging team. So when others are doing their proposals, they're getting feedback from a range of people with different backgrounds as well. So I think that's the benefit of having our Te Manawa Haukura team. And then they come to you and Tim as experts as well. But yeah, it's just making the most of those within our networks. Yeah.
Ka pai. Kia ora, Heidi. That's an awesome comment. And something that I've on is what a lovely, safe environment this is. That. Sorry, we did a bit of reverb in the background. What a lovely, safe environment it is that people can share their proposals and there's no judgment. Everyone just wants to support people to put in the strongest proposal possible. And so, yeah, don't be daunted. And I often say to the Kaimahi and Kairanga who I support as well, commenting is the easy part. The people who've actually put the words onto paper, that's the hard work. And so, yeah, know that all our comments come from a good place, but it's easy to comment on something. What's hard is actually doing that first step of getting it written. I don't know if Tim, if you have any observations to share.
Oh yeah, thanks for pulling me in. No, I thought your presentation was just perfect. Chef's kiss is great. It was wonderful. I thought everything you talked about, I just nodded along the way. I thought it was a really good pātai from you as well, Marama, around Te Reo Māori. And I think there are other aspects of that, particularly in the current political climate that we're in around those sort of topics. And one thing I always tell people, and I've tried to do myself, I'm non-Māori, so not from that perspective, but is be yourself. Don't change who you are and don't change your values for what you think a funder wants. Be yourself, be true to yourself. And if that means you want to write your whole proposal in Te Reo Māori, then do it and put that on the funder to respond to that. And if I've always thought if that's why your proposal fails, then that's something I'd be willing to own and be strong in that and actually say, no, I'm more comfortable failing because I've put myself forward and been true to myself than to try and change sort of my morality, if you will, to try to adhere to a funder's response. So that was just a bit of a whakaaro from my side. I think it's good that we be staunch in those areas that we want to be staunch in, whatever that is for you. And I work in health research, so that's very different to somebody who works in, say, social science or whatever. But I think we all have those areas that we like to push the envelope, and I think that's something that's important with research in Rangahau is pushing that envelope and standing up for that kaupapa that's important to you. So yeah, that was just one that came to mind. And then I think that idea of failure as well, of not actually being failure, that idea of iterating that process, and just because your first proposal isn't successful oftentimes you can learn and morph, and that end proposal that maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line ends up being better, more powerful, more valuable, more impactful, and the learnings along the way can be really valuable. So that idea of failure not actually being failure, but an opportunity to grow, I think is really important in this area, because otherwise it can be really demoralizing, to be honest. And I've been on the receiving end of plenty of that feedback myself, as well as can be difficult. So yeah, that's all I've got. It's wonderful, and so nice seeing all the faces here today, and I'm sure more listening online. So kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, Tim.
Kia ora koutou. Can I just, is it okay if I just pipe up a little bit? Yeah, firstly, mihi ana kia koe, Mireille. It was all the like bread and butter of writing a proposal, which we're all in the thick of at the moment, you know, on the team that are going through the process of doing a mana tuapapa application. And so it was just like, oh yeah, I need to remember that. And, you know, having a couple of breakdowns yesterday as I'm going through, going, no, I'm not even going to do this anymore. And, you know, that process, it's good to be reminded of what's important, and what Tim said as well around staying true to our kaupapa, because it's really easy to let it go. Like I realised after I'd written it and got some feedback, I'd forgot to write in there that, you know, I'd written mine in English, but I published academically in te reo Māori. And I hadn't even written that in the application, that I do that. And I'm like, oh yeah, you know, because I'm so in the process of fitting into the boxes that it's easy just to forget what it is. And I'm kind of like, I'm in tautoko what Tim's saying, you have to, you know, stick to your kaupapa. But then sometimes I feel like I've got to be flexible, because when I get the money, then I'm going to do it with what I want to. But I've got to try to, you know, miri te rā kaupapa kia u ki tō rātou e hia e pai ai. And then after that point, then I can, once it's in our bank account, then I have to do what I want. You know, within reason, you know, I just have to try and get it there, not lie, but miri who I am, so that I'm aligning with what they want to see. Particularly in this economic climate where we're not flavour of the month, we are not valued for what we bring as much as we have been under a Labour government. So yeah, there's this kind of like balance to find there. You know, I've integrated like economics into mine. I know nothing about economics actually, but you know, knowing that that's a priority for this government. Yeah, so I am really grateful for that, Mireille, and the pragmatic sensibleness of it when we're in the flux of emotions. It's good to just be reminded of the good, sensible decisions to make. Yeah, so mihi ana.
Kia ora, Joni. I just wanted to pick up, actually, that's a really good point you made as well, of, you know, you said you almost forgot to say in your proposal that, you know, you write in te reo Māori. And I guess that's an observation I've had since joining Te Manua Haukora, is how much, I hate using the word sell because it's not the right word, but how people undersell that, because I know from working with Pākehā researchers, they will be claiming everything, you know, and then almost I think Te Ao Māori and Mātauranga Māori, you know, it just flows through you without even having to think about it, that you almost don't say it. And so, yeah, I just wanted to sort of pick up on that observation of yours. I see also Kimiora asked a great question about AI assistance becoming more prevalent in proposals, and I think the answer to that is yes. And there's a couple of things I would say. I think AI can be really helpful. And we actually just had our R&I Hui this week, and we're talking about how we might use AI more strategically in proposals, because I think it can be a good way of brainstorming and tweaking and thinking about things, but also, I guess, urge some caution with AI, particularly around what you put into AI, you know, and data sovereignty. And so I think there's a bigger piece there about just being very careful. And also, you know, I guess, oh, sorry, I think someone is sharing It was funny because your whisper was like, "Is that me?" In our Joys of Shared Office. So I think use AI, but use it with caution would be my advice. But it is a way of working smarter, not harder. I know also Kane has been leading some great mahi in Rangahau around AI, and so there's opportunities as well to see what we're doing at Te Wānanga Aotearoa. So yeah, I think watch this space definitely, because it's something that I also am really keen to upskill more on. Oh, there we go. Excellent, Heidi. And even better, I can now say that Kane has got an AI workshop coming up on the 25th of July. And thanks, Joni. Joni's definitely, I'd say, one of the early adopters of AI. And so that's really good advice, just making sure that the model can't learn from what you're putting into it. Kapai Hannah, yeah. And that's really good advice. Thank you. If you don't have to chat, Hannah says, tends to use it to help me word things better or for other resources, but I don't ask questions about my kaupapa specifically. Thanks, Hannah. Does anyone have any questions, or also welcome observations from the wider team? Lots of people here have put in lots of applications in their time.
I might jump in briefly again, just because we've got some time. And really just to reiterate that point that I think Joni and Mireille raised around forgetting, quote unquote, to put in, to tell certain things in your proposal. Like Joni said, forgot to talk about the fact that she publishes in Te Reo Māori. And Mireille highlighted that we often undersell ourselves. And I think that's potentially maybe the number one, say, pitfall or thing to keep in mind, is that funders only know what you tell them. And oftentimes we can be our own biggest critics, or our own sort of self-deprecators of thinking, oh, I do this, but it's not good enough, or I do this, but it's not at this level, so I shouldn't talk about it. Or even we just forget what we do. Sometimes we're doing so much. And I think looking at this, at the team in Te Wānanga, there's so many things that are going on that oftentimes we just forget to talk about them. So I think it's really can be really pragmatic to just keep that in mind of what do you want the funder to know about you, or what is it important that they know about you? Make sure you tell them that information. And another little trick, quote unquote, is to get other people that know you to read your proposal, because those people will be able to say, oh, actually, Marama, what about that amazing book you're working on? Why have you not talked about that? For example, sorry, Marama, to use you, but like, we often know our friends or our colleagues sometimes better than they know themselves, or are able to sort of highlight those things that individually we may not acknowledge as being special. So I think that can be a really useful tool of get a draft in early and then get friends and colleagues and others to read it. And I think, Heidi made a good point there. A benefit of the team here is that there's so many people who are willing to do that. Yeah, got it.
Just following on from what Tim said as well, it's helpful as well to have lots of different people with different experiences read it, because they're all going to have a different lens on it. And so, some applications you'll have, the public summary, which is meant to be written for a general audience. And so you're like, well, I'm not necessarily going to have my colleague who's deep in the Rangahau with me read that section, but I'm going to give that to my flatmate or my partner or my kid or Heidi. Does see Heidi wave there? It's because that's someone who's going to read it and just be like, wait, what does this mean? Why are you saying this? I don't care. And the other thing that can be quite helpful is just to think about what your pitch would be. You catch a taxi to the airport and the driver says, what do you work on? And then so that you'd be like, well, why should they care about it? A lot of these funds that you're going to get potentially $1 million to work on this, and so it's like, well, why should, we pay taxes and our taxes go to a lot of the government funders and then they pay for the Rangahau. Say, well, why as a taxpayer should that money be spent? And so have that in your mind as well, just that justification, so that when you're writing it, you bring the reader along on that journey. Because what you really want to do is have the assessor be like, oh my God, this is so vital, I want this to be funded, and it's that passion as well. And I think that when someone does articulate that passion, it comes across really well, and it just becomes this groundswell that the reader's like, yep, this has got to be funded.
You're like an auctioneer. Any last questions?
Oh, Alex.
Ka pai, Alex.
Oh, morena koutou. Not so
Morena.
much a apartheid, but more of, I guess, feedback as to manoa haukura as a whole. My journey started at Hui Taumata, and we're like week 8 or something of the workshops, or maybe I'm behind. Maybe it just feels like week 8, and honestly feel like that I'm just cheating the whole education system, and I'm getting all my masters and Rangahau training in these weeks. I'm spending this time with you guys. I just wanted to reiterate Heidi's point of feedback from the team, and at every step of the way since Hui Taumata, I've been able to talk to each and every one of you, and you've created such a safe environment for me and the start of my Rangahau journey. I feel that it's safe for me to fall, but know that I'm not falling into the pits of hene nui te pō. I'm just, falling into the te manawa haukura tari at Hamaki Makaurau, Māngere campus, and just being able to just safely be myself, and the environment is safe, and like my learnings throughout this time, like each time I catch up with Kitty, she always comments on, your writing's getting so much better, like we can see it becoming a full-on proposal, and it's really cool to hear that you all talk about like my Rangahau and what I'm passionate about amongst yourselves. So every time I talk to everyone's got great perspective, and it makes me question my why, not question my why, but move deeper into why my why is important. And it also has helped me be able to communicate to different people amongst a broad scale. Like for you guys, like kai rangahau rangatira, and then I come home and like I talk to my family, and being able to move between those different platforms, I guess, or levels of communication about my rangahau, has really solidified the learnings that you guys have been teaching. And this workshop in particular was the one that I was most scared of, but Mireille's actually been there since the get-go, since I got volunteered by Kitty to quickly do a proposal, which I didn't quite get there, but Mireille's been there from the beginning, and she's quietly been working in the background, and I know that she has, and I'm very grateful for you, Mireille. And you've honestly made funding and sounding like an academic without having the academic background achievable and reachable and of a high standard. So mihi nui ana kia koutou. Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora, Alex. It's me who should thank you. It's such a privilege, this job. Really, thank you. Uru Pikia, did I see a hand?
Yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora.
I think off the back of Alex speaking up, it's kind of encouraged me to say hi, guys. I've been wanting to connect in. I saw these workshops, and this is the first time I've actually made it to one because I don't know, it wasn't in my calendar. So, but yeah, I love the workshop. I love the guys. I love the work that you guys are doing. And then at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like almost out of my depth. I'm trying to dip my toe in, figure out where to start. I don't even know, what's out there or which program to which institution to look at, what is going to be a fit. So yeah, I'm hoping just by coming along and joining in, I'll find a way.
Absolutely. The first step. Where are you based?
In Ōtautahi. And I haven't bumped into Sasha since she I emailed her and said we need to catch up, and then no, we haven't. But
You gotta
and
text her, stalk and text her. I'm really good at stalking.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and Te Mihinga invited me to present at Hui Taumata. I shared a part of the journey from my master's journey, but yeah, looking into this whole proposals PhD. I'm like, do I really want to do a PhD? Or do I don't know.
No, I love your kōrero.
Yeah.
And I think you said, where do I start? I think you have started. You've made that first step, and we've got your name now. So we will make sure that we connect you, and yeah, here for that journey.
Cool. Thanks.
I've got your number now, Urupukia, so
Yes.
you're on my radar. No. I'm joking. Both. But
So
true.
she's not really joking.
Any more part-time?
No, just because I was just gonna say, well, I'm glad because I'm gonna need it. I feel gonna need the
We've got
support.
you. I do more than backpacks. It's only Kimi order that backpacks. So no more part-time. I'll just put in the chat. Our workshop next week is with our lovely Shelley, looking at dissemination and impact.
Awesome.
So same time, Urupukia. I'll try and remember to send a reminder to remind everyone. But it's the same link to join every Friday. But in saying that, from August we've got 3 workshops and an open mic for Poetry Month coming up. So we'll send all that information out to everyone. But yeah, if there's nothing else, we'll let everyone go back to enjoying the rest of their Friday.